who is heading up the web and content marketing team at WordPress VIP, and loves the intersection between art and technology, which seems to fit in really well with this topic, where she's talking about welcoming our robot collaborators. So I have to say, I, for one, welcome our robot collaborators. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks, Tess.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. A lot has been said about generative AI's role in the creative process, and yes, they may be seen as robot overlords by some, but I have started to embrace them and see them as collaborators. So I wanted to talk about how my team and I work with AI in content marketing to enhance rather than replace creativity. So I'm Tess. As was introduced, I head the content and web marketing teams at WordPress VIP, and I also blog about creativity at tessneedham.com. I'm really interested in the intersection of creativity and technology. So with the introduction of generative AI into the creative landscape, it's a really interesting time to reflect on how we best use this technology. So, with artificial intelligence engines writing and generating artworks, it's been really controversial for several reasons. I'm sure that everybody is no stranger to these controversies. Artists have rightly protested about their work being scraped for these tools. The very boundaries of what it means to be creative have been tested. Every app seemingly now has AI capabilities. Some apps have actually made a stand against it. My favourite iPad creativity app, Procreate, they made a statement saying that they're against generative AI because creativity is made, not generated. That's really appealing to me as a creative, that this tool that I use really seems to get me. It seems to really hold my human creativity in such great regard. But I guess the reality of the situation is generative AI, it's not going away. So we put out this report once a year called Content Matters, and we survey a whole bunch of people who are working with content professionals. So this year, we learned that 46% of respondents are using AI tools to write content. So it's really obviously something that everybody is at least dabbling with, if not spending upwards of tens of thousands of dollars on if you're talking about enterprise companies. But hear me out. Maybe that's okay. It really depends on the goal of your content, and that's one of the things that I want to talk to today. That the goal of your content might actually dictate that it's not actually that important to be creative with that content, but sometimes it is. So first of all, I'll get to a few definitions because I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So with content marketing, what we're talking about when we talk about content marketing, I don't want to assume any knowledge here. So what I'm talking about is that we're creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to attract and retain a clearly defined audience. It's a fairly dry explanation of what it is, but it's basically making connections with your audience through content that will attract and retain them as customers. The goal of this is that you're providing value to your customers and you're making them smarter and better at their job, and in the process, you're building trust in your brand, and therefore, hopefully you're making sales, you're gaining customers. So put it another way, our job as content marketers is to make purposeful, meaningful connections with our audience, to give them value and to connect with them as they explore our product, make a purchase, become a user, hopefully become an advocate, this thing called the marketing funnel or the sales funnel. So it's really important to really understand the goal of your content marketing when you're deciding about how and when you're going to use AI tools, because not every company may have exactly the same goal for content marketing. Next, what do I mean when I talk about creativity? It's such a huge term. What does it really mean to be creative? So for me, it's really about filtering inputs from everywhere through your own unique perspective and experiences, and then producing those into meaningful outputs. So fairly broad. We're not just talking about painting and drawing and writing, but it's this real thing about sort of processing it through your own unique perspective and experiences. I really like this quote from the author Anne Patchett. I know it's long, but she says, "I am a compost heap, and everything I interact with, every experience I've had, gets shoveled onto the heap where it eventually mulches down, is digested and excreted by worms and rots. It's from that rich, dark humus, the combination of what you encountered, what you know, and what you've forgotten, that ideas start to grow." I really love this for several reasons, but it's really like gross, and it makes me think of the previous talk that was all about poop. So it's really like earthy and visceral. It's very human. It's not what you think about when you think about AI or machines. Another really useful framework for creativity that I like is from Margaret Bowden. And she talks about 3 ways that creativity can happen. And it's, for me, where I can start thinking about AI in this process. So the first is making unfamiliar combinations of familiar ideas. So pulling multiple concepts together in order to create something new as one of the types of creativity. For example, think about like a comedian who writes a joke that juxtaposes 2 things together and creates something new out of them that is hopefully humorous. And so it's possible for AI to do this, right? Like AI could happily throw up a bunch of combinations of things, that would be fine. But you still kind of need a human to determine whether the joke is funny, like whether it's successful. So there still has to be some meaning in the connection for us to find it valuable. So we can start to see how like AI can do a lot of these things of creativity, but a human is still required in the process. The second of the Margaret Bowden's types of creativity is exploring the boundaries of conceptual spaces. So it's talking about that within a given conceptual space, like it's a style of art or a theory of chemistry, there's many thoughts that are possible and only some of them have actually been thought. So you might have the creativity might come out of sort of exploring this area and finding something new in it. And sure, AI can do this too. It can explore fixed work, like work within these human-defined boundaries, and maybe it can discover something new. But again, up to the human to sort of say whether it's new. And then the third type of creativity is where we recognise the limitations of this conceptual space that we're in, and we actually push beyond them, go beyond the edge and break out of that to actually transform that conceptual space. So AI really falls flat here because it just operates within this certain area. It can't go beyond that without a human being involved. So that is just one framework of creativity to think about AI. So we're starting to see some of the limits of AI in creativity and where a human is actually needed in that. So we think about this thing of, well, can AI be creative? So when we're talking about AI in content marketing, I find it helpful to kind of ask, when in this process is human creativity the most important and when is it the least important? Like I said before, it might not actually be important to be super creative in all of the areas that we do of content marketing. Creatives like to think that we're always, expressing ourselves artistically and can only come from us, but the reality of doing content marketing, especially for a business, is that as with many creative professions, it's not really about us. It's not really about like self-expression so much. We need to adopt the voice of the business, provide value on topics that are top of mind for customers. And that might not always align with our own kind of creative self-expression. Definitely requires a lot of creative thinking though. So in this frame, it sort of can become helpful to ask ourselves, how much does it matter to our audience if something is generated by a human? And maybe it's uncomfortable because maybe it actually exposes some things that we've overvalued in the past as being created by a human. So I am going to give some examples in a bit, but just posing these questions. I think that the humanity of the connection that we make with our audience is really important. So we don't want to remove the human from that process, but there are ways that we can make ourselves like better and more efficient humans. We can use AI to replace the parts of content marketing that are the least creative, and so we can spend more time on the creative parts. So I think about like, rather than the AI creating the art, I want the AI to do the cooking and the cleaning so that I have more time to create the art, is the essential idea. I'm really fascinated by the creative process. This is my creative process, as I did one of these illustrations. In particular, I'm really interested in where the intentions and the inspiration of the creator meet the interpretation and experience of the consumers of that creativity. I really miss DVD commentary tracks. I used to always listen to those, so I'd watch the movie normally, and then I would go into the special features and select the DVD commentary track and listen to watch the whole movie again, but this time listening to all the choices that the directors made and the actors made. And it just made me appreciate the film more. So I've always loved that kind of behind the scenes of the creativity. And so when we're thinking about like, when is it important for the humans, that human creativity, it's been helpful for me to think through like, what are those specific elements of creativity that AI can't replace, or of the creative process that are important to retain. So a few of those. One is taste. Taste is like a uniquely human quality of creativity that AI can't possess. And you might go, oh, well, AI can have taste. Sure, you can program it to have taste, but that would be the taste of the programmer, not the taste of the actual AI. Humans have preferences, and we know what good looks like, and what good looks like to me is not what good looks like to somebody else. So taste is one of those things that's really, it's really hard for AI to replicate, and really important when we talk about creativity. Messiness. Like, creativity is about accidents, and it's really compelling to us as humans to see this creative process that maybe has some imperfections in it. Even when AI has imperfections, like when it hallucinates, it does so with such confidence that it's not like we can see any of the messiness that goes on behind it. Robots can be and have been programmed to play like a perfect game of tennis against each other. But after a while, isn't that boring to watch? Because it's just perfect. There's no imperfection in it. Struggle. So humans experience struggle, and we either overcome this struggle or we succumb to it and we create art out of that. And when creative work is born out of this struggle, the consumer of the work recognises their own struggles within it, and that is a really powerful and human connection. So struggle is one of these other human values of creativity that I think are so important. Self-reflection. So AI doesn't look back at what it did and determine whether it was successful and make improvements to that and iterate on that. It can't really do that without a human telling it, you know, this was a good answer, this was a bad answer, this is not what I wanted. Humans have this self-reflection and this sort of growth in their the creative practice that I think is really, really compelling. And we can't discount the fact that creativity brings joy. It's very joyful to actually create something. Even when you're being creative for commercial purposes at work, enjoyment is still a really important aspect, to have that enjoyment in your work. AI doesn't feel joy, and I don't think that we should discount that joy, that emotion in the creative process. If there are parts of the creative process that you don't find joyful, maybe that's a good one that you can pass over to AI. So unlike machines, humans have taste, they have this messiness, they struggle, and they're capable of self-reflection and joy. And these aspects of humanity make our creativity more compelling and also more effective as a means of communication. Creativity is a lot about being me. It's that compost heap that's inside of me, and no AI is going to be me as well as I can be me. So I think it's really important to recognise all of those human elements of creativity, because those are the things that we can really lean into when we're thinking about the things that AI can take over. Those are the things that are more important to be human. So I definitely still have hesitancy about AI. especially generative AI and when it generates creative work. But I have recognized some ways to work with it in content marketing. I have overcome my own skepticism and welcomed our robot collaborators, not overlords. It really comes down, in my opinion, to how you think about the tools. AI is best used as a tool and not to replace the creative person. So we're not trying to replace that creative process, that really human creative process. It's really to think about it as a tool that's going to aid your creativity. So another framework for you, the Roy Barhart from Bloomberg breaks AI tools down into these 3 categories. The first one are looms. So like an automated loom can replace a weaver, these tools replace a human. According to Barhart, tech companies have over-indexed on this. There are too many tools that are trying to have AI replace the person. It's like we as tech people are really enamored with this idea that robots can be like humans and, the sort of sci-fi thing. And so we have made most of the tools in this category. But this, I'll go into this a bit later, but this is not the best way to use AI. The other one, or the one that's probably the best use of AI, is slide rules. So these assist a person, like a slide rule makes a calculation faster. The best AI tools for creativity are these in this category. They might assist you to summarize ideas faster or to change the tone of something that you've already written. So it's just the human is doing most of the work. The AI is being used as to assist the human. And the third category are cranes. So they're tools that allow somebody to do something that would otherwise be impossible for them to do by themselves. So AI tools can be these cranes, and it can be kind of cool if they sort of make you superhuman. One thing I think about is like AI translations. You still need a human to kind of check that translation, but it really can help you to do something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do yourself. So, as I said, looms are pretty much the worst use of AI as far as creativity goes, but it is the category that a lot of generative AI tools are in. Anne Handley, who's one of my content marketing heroes, she doesn't like this at all. She says, I'm not worried about robots taking our jobs, but I am worried about robots undermining our confidence. Your first draft is your thinking draft. Don't outsource your thinking. That first draft is where you're most connected to your creativity. It's that compost heap. It's that place where all of the ideas come from. And if you're using generative AI to generate that first idea, that first sketch, that first draft, you're really missing an essential part of the creative process there. So Barhart says that we should be focused on AI tools that are the slide rule and the crane. So tech that augments our human capacity rather than tries to replace it. And like I said, AI should really be making us superpowered as humans, but not replacing us. So I think I've made the point that AI is not creative in itself, but it can be used as a tool in the creative process. It's really best used to free us up from repetitive or less creative tasks so that we have more time and creativity for the strategy. Involving creatives earlier in the strategic process is then what you can get, because those creatives are freed up from those maybe repetitive or less creative tasks. And then you get those creative minds to think about problems from early on, which is always going to have a much better outcome. So I wanted to talk through some of the ways that we use AI in our content marketing. One of them that works really well is metadata. So things like excerpts and tags. So once we've written the piece of content, then we use these AI tools to tell us like tags, categories, excerpts. It's some of the busy work of a content marketer, to be honest. I don't think there's any content marketer who really loves doing that stuff. And now it's significantly easier with AI. So we use a tool called Parsley, which is our content analytics product. But there are other tools that do this as well. With Parsley, it generates an excerpt right in the WordPress editor. So we've got our post or page in WordPress. We go over to where you've got the little excerpt field and you press generate and it generates something. Most of the time we have to tweak that a little bit. The human is still needed in the process, but it gets us a lot of the way there when we've already got that content. It's not creating something new, it's just helping us summarize it and giving it to us in the right number of characters. Social posts is a really good use of AI, in my opinion. It's typical to share out content that you're making on social media, but usually that social post is just a highlight from the piece or some other kind of what we say derivative content. So most AI tools, anything really from ChatGPT to anything else, will do this for you. And it's really time-saving, and it can pick up on, you can ask it to do like a series of social posts. It can pick up on just, the main top 3 things. It can format it with hashtags and emojis, the right number of characters, all of that kind of thing. So that's a really time-saving use of AI. Internal linking is really important for SEO, to be linking between content that you have on your own site. Also a really tedious task for a content marketer. So AI tools can be really helpful to scan your site for content based on certain keywords, and then actually show you where you can link to it in your post that you're writing. So we use a tool called Writer. There are lots of other tools that do this. So that's the thing about AI as well, is there's multiple tools to do everything. But it scans our site for those keywords that are based on, that are connected to what we're writing. It suggests, do you want to link to that here? Huge time saver, especially when you have a lot of content. Insights from analytics through AI can be really helpful. So for us, our tool Parsley is a content analytics tool, but it also shows up in the WordPress editor. So it really connects the dots between what's been successful for you in the past with your content, and so how you might want to work that into new content that you're making. So we can get suggestions for our title of our piece based on what's worked well for us in the past, what content to write next, to write more of based on content performance. So that's I think a really great use of the machines, because that's one of those tedious tasks as well. Another one that's hugely time-saving is transcribing and summarizing. So what we do a lot of, we have a lot of events and we record them, and then we want to post a blog post about them. So we will get the recording and run it through AI. Right now we're using our tool Writer for that, but there are lots of other tools. In fact, the new version of Notes, the Notes app on an iPhone or a Mac, will do that for you as well. Really handy to transcribe all of the audio or a video, and then you can also then use that for captioning after a human has gone through it. Again, human is still important, but once you've done the human check of that transcription, it's much quicker than actually transcribing it yourself for captions if you're sharing that video on social or on your website. And then also it can give you a summary of that transcript, so that will really help to write a blog post about that event, that kind of thing. Huge time saver for AI. And then lastly, tone and voice. So we use AI for checking tone and voice within our brand guidelines. And this is also really helpful if you've got lots of authors on your blog, because you want to make sure that they adhere to important things that are in your style and tone guidelines. Our AI tool Writer does this, but also Grammarly does that, and there are multiple other tools that you can do that. So it will flag things like an acronym, if it's the first time you're using an acronym, it will suggest that you spell it out the first time. Other things like product names, capital P, dang it, it'll tell you when to capitalize the P in WordPress. And you can also get it to suggest rewrites in a different tone, if your tone is too casual or too highbrow or whatever. So those are some ways that we use AI really as a slide rule to help us save time, because we have some amazingly creative people on the team, and I want them to use their creativity for the most things possible. I don't want them to get bogged down doing all of this stuff, which is, in my opinion, less important that a creative is doing. So AI is not creative in its own right. But that's okay, because we don't want it to replace our human creativity. There are so many reasons why it's important to have a human being that creative person. That creative part is the thinking part, and that brings us joy and humanity and connection, as well as just giving us the ability to express ourselves. But there are many uses for AI as a tool in the creative process, and you can use it to free up your time to be more creative, or to achieve things that you couldn't have done on your own. So really giving you a superpower. So it's really important to understand the goals of your content marketing, to know the best places to use those tools, and also to recognize the places where a human touch is really important. So then you can figure out what are the no robot zones for you in your particular business or use. And that's all I have. Thank you so much. Happy for questions. I'm also not really on social media, but you can go to my website. You can chat to me here as well.
Great, thanks. That was
Thanks.
awesome.
Thank
I love
you.
the analogies.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love the loom and sort of crane and everything analogy. I think it's a great way of thinking about AI.
For sure.
Yeah, do we have any questions?
Also, I get a lot of joy out of hand illustrating my slides. None of these were AI generated. Thank you.
Much better than AI.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you. This is a compliment more than a question. I just love that you explained it as AI being an augmentation rather than replacing creativity. Because I spend a lot of time on the internet, and I can totally see where people have just outright used AI for their stuff. It sticks out like a sore thumb to me. So yeah, thank you for explaining it the way you did.
Oh, sure. No worries.
Yeah, thanks. That was great.
Thank you.
So you talked about the first draft being really important. Would you say that first draft is something you could throw into an AI tool rather than just write me something about this? You'd throw your draft in first and then work backwards from there?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I do that all the time. I probably did it with this talk in the early stages of developing this talk as well. I tend to collect a lot of, when I'm doing a talk like this, or when I want to write a blog post or something, I tend to collect a whole lot of thoughts over like a long period of time, like just kind of dump them all into some sort of note form. And usually then I try to sort of collect my thoughts myself. But there definitely comes a place where, or a point in that process where I feel like I could use some outside help or like an outside perspective. And I definitely have, like, I think I tried out a few different tools actually for this, but yeah, I throw that first draft into an AI tool, usually to help me make sense of it, like help me group together like ideas or something like that. So it's not coming up with the ideas, but it's helping me to consolidate bits of it together. So there are lots of other purposes for it like that I've used, but that's one that I would say is one that I use quite a lot, because I do tend to sort of brain dump notes. And then, I go have a shower and then I think of more things and I come back and brain dump some more notes. So yeah, being able to kind of make sense of a brain dump like that, I think is really helpful. And then I would use that to kind of write another draft from. So it's almost like just a sounding board. Yeah.
Thanks, Tess. It was so good.
Oh, thanks.
I loved your talk. I love the drawings. They're wonderful.
Thank you.
My question is, if you're working with a team and there is resistance to AI, or like people feel are nervous about using it in the creative space, how do you partner with them or journey with them in like helping them to come to the space that you've come to with creativity?
Oh, such a good question. Yeah, we have had a lot of that in our team. People are worried about it taking their job, or not like, oh, I'm going to get fired tomorrow because of this AI tool, but taking away the parts of their job that they like the most. That's been one of the things. So as a leader, I make sure that I really understand what parts of people's jobs they like the most. Because maybe I'm assuming that they like something that they don't actually like. So that's sort of step one, I would say, is to make sure that you really understand know your creative, like understand what parts of their job that they're really interested in and that they maybe don't like as much. I'm trying to think now back, we've definitely had, I have one writer on my team who loves editing, and so we don't want to take away the editing from that person. So helping him to see, giving him time to play around with the tool and helping to see what things can it save time doing has been really useful. Also, not just, there does need to be a kind of onboarding of the tool or the experimentation phase. Some people won't just jump in and experiment by themselves. They might need, we've purchased a few of these tools in the past, so we've actually had a customer success manager being able to do sessions and training sessions with us, that sort of thing of being able to see all of the things that are possible. But yeah, really, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but yeah, I think just understanding, it's sort of like understanding what is most important for the human and least important to have the human in. It's also what is most important for this creative in their job and what's least important to them, and then trying to see how AI can help with those other things. Yeah, I don't know that I have any at the top of my head. Thanks.
Do we have other questions? I had a question.
I think there's one there too. That's right.
I was just going
No,
to
go
say,
ahead.
is it, the flip side of that, is it, have you sort of just identified people's biggest pain points as a way of sort of selling it instead of, I think it's a really good point about don't take things away that people like. But yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying identify what each person's pain point and how AI might be able to take that away kind of thing?
Or as a team or an organisation.
Yeah, I guess we definitely have conversations about pain points quite often. Sometimes the prompt for us even stepping into AI tools really is maybe common, which is that a boss says you need to create more content and you go, well, we only have 2 people. So you're sort of figuring out that how to use it to scale content. So I think that in terms of what the business demands, it's usually the business demands more. So it is definitely a way of figuring out, how do we use AI to create more, but do so in a way that doesn't compromise our taste, our quality bar for our own content. I don't know if that's really answering your question either, but we definitely do that. We definitely think about what are our pain points and how can AI really specifically help to solve those pain points, for sure.
Cool. Great presentation, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
That plugin that you're talking about was Parsley.
Parsley, yep.
PASSL.
Yeah, so it's not a plugin. It is a plugin as well, but it's a product that if you go to wpvip.com, WordPress VIP, it's a tool that we acquired a few years ago. So it's actually parse.ly, and it's a content analytics platform. And so it gives you a whole lot of stuff, and you have your own dashboard, and you can see the performance of your content in a much more user-friendly way than Google Analytics. But also it integrates back in with WordPress via a plugin, but it's a plugin that's part of our platform as well as a standalone plugin. But if you can also, there's also the website parse.ly if you want to learn more about it.
Mine's probably more a statement more than anything, but do you fear that we might be in a stage that we could be just becoming dumber? Seriously, because we all jump into the tool's only educated and it's just going around and around in circles, and that creativity is not coming through. And I think the hardest challenge we have is how do we educate our clients to not, because their first reaction is, I'll just do it in AI. And they just start pumping out. I've seen it something like that. They're just pumping out content, and you can just see it's crap.
Yeah.
And this is not doing you good because your SEO is going down. And trying to educate them is just the hardest thing.
Yeah, I think the shiny thing syndrome is real. But the what I would always go back to is the goals. Like if your goal is to get more SEO, but you're pumping out AI content that's the same as lots of other content and it's going down, well, then you're not achieving your goal. So maybe I think maybe it goes back to the goals. If your goal is to like drive people to a form and convert them, I would just kind of lean on the data. If the SEO is going down, then it's not working. If the conversions are going down, then it's not working. But I don't know, maybe have an open mind. Maybe it is working. Maybe your conversions are going up. Yeah, it's definitely a hard problem, especially if people don't value the same things that you value, if they don't value that creativity. But yeah, hopefully the data would speak for itself. If it doesn't, then, and you know, the goals, if you're tracking the right goals, then hopefully that would prove your point. But I don't know. I don't know how to get away from making us all dumber.
Any other questions? All right, great.
Thanks for such good
Thanks, Tess.
questions. Thank you.